I've been waiting for this moment for so long to be able to talk, interview, chat, engage, learn. So, Jeffrey, please introduce yourself.
Let me do it.
To people then.
Down there. My name's Jeffrey Boakye. Hello. I'm a teacher of 15 years. That's the craft. That's the main thing. I'm an author. I write a lot. I do journalism. I do broadcasting as well. So you might hear me on the radio every now and again. Bits and pieces like that. I do anti-racist work, training, consultancy as well. Mainly over the past 12 to 18 months or so. So that's like a new chapter. Yeah. I'm a father, two little kids. You know all about that.
Yeah.
So I was laughing.
I know all about three of them.
Three.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Don't.
Oh my gosh.
I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
That's good. Three's good. Go for it. It's all good.
All right.
Yeah.
It's like your first answer.
Yeah.
My sister's got 4, so I know all about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm a father. That's a big piece of the puzzle. And I grew up in London, Brixton, Southwest London. Are you Peckham?
No. Our offices are in Peckham.
Yeah.
I grew up more southeast, so Blackheath,
Right.
Charlton area.
Yeah.
Where I hung out most of my time.
Yeah. So I was southwest always.
Yeah.
Which means that I never, because it didn't travel that way.
Yeah.
So actually, there's the whole bit of London that I'm only exploring now.
Yeah.
To be honest, but now I live in East Yorkshire, so that's my little potted history.
Yeah, that's mad. Like you go from Brixton.
Yeah.
How did you end up in East Yorkshire?
Oh man, love takes you to strange places.
Yeah.
Because my wife grew up in East Yorkshire. We met in London when I was training to be a teacher. We grew up in London, grew our family, I should say, and we always knew that at some point we might move. And then work opportunities came up. There was a potential school in the region in South Yorkshire, and we thought, this might be a time we can make this work. I'm quite a homebody anyway, so we decided to make the move, and I left London. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, I mean, the question we've all got, everyone's out thinking, is there any black people in East Yorkshire?
There are black people in East Yorkshire. There was one at first, my postman.
Yeah. So,
big up TJ.
Yeah, you even know your postman's name?
We were on speaking terms within hours, because that's the real thing. Like, he saw me, I saw him. Because it was in East Yorkshire, it was more than the nod. It was instantly, let's connect.
Yeah.
We had a handshake. We were like swapping recipes. He was telling about his history. And that was really important because I realized for the first time, because being a Londoner, you sort of assume that, you kind of carry that with you. Like Londonness is a way, and it gives you a certain confidence, especially in cities and things. When you're out of the city, there are not many people who look like you suddenly. So you have to realize you have to build your community, and you realize you're part of a community, which in London is more visible, it's more obvious. But I say that, but we lived in Walthamstow for a bit before we left. I'm kind of going off piece.
No, it's all right. This is fun.
It's like, one thing I always found interesting about Walthamstow was it had this appearance of being really diverse and really multicultural and so on. But actually, when you went to that park, I was still usually one of one black dads. Yeah. And this is in like Walthamstow. So I was very much aware that there were still some tensions about how diverse are these communities.
And we also got to appreciate that with London, there's been gentrification in the last 10, 15 years, which changes. I mean, as you know, our offices are in Peckham, but it's not the Peckham I would have known 10 years ago.
Definitely not.
And when people, it's quite funny because there's a Nike advert which we often use in our training, the Londoner one.
Yeah.
Skeptic and all those guys.
Yep.
And we always use it as a safeguarding tool. We always like say, watch this advert, and everyone's enjoying it, and then it's kind of like, now how many safeguarding issues can you find with these young people? But there's this one scene where this girl's running, and then they're being chased by like quad bikes, and they've got like skeleton hands coming after. And I always say, particularly when we're outside of London, I'm like, that was filmed on Peckham High Street, but trust me, there's more coffee shops on Peckham High Street and wine bars than what you've just seen there. And then and that doesn't mean that Peckham's still not a little bit edgy, but it's definitely changed. But listen, this is I know this is going to be a mad conversation. I got to big you up. First of all, let me go here. The first time I came across you was when Blacklisted came out. And I'm like, let me go here. And I was like, listen, all right, read this. My wife read it first actually, and she was like, cool, this is incredible. So I read it, I was like, this is fantastic. And it's just so funny. And I was just like, I can relate to so much. Then I started following you, and I'm like, man, this guy's doing so much. And I think I called you on social media like the hardest working just person. I can't call you a writer. I can't just call you a teacher.
I want that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, you wanted that, honestly, because it was like you were doing this, doing that, and I was just like, this is incredible. And particularly around post George Floyd, there was just so much you were inspiring and encouraging me. I'm just
that's
like,
amazing.
It's great just to see another black man, an articulate black man in the context of teaching. And then a lot of the work that we do, we go in and we train teachers as well. So to have you as a reference point as well is brilliant. But then I then saw a new book which caught me off guard. And am I allowed to show this cover?
That's a proof one, so you can show the cover.
Yeah. I don't want to like mash
don't worry about it.
This is a proof copy.
It's a proof copy,
but I was like, okay, what is this? And the fact that you're calling this book, I heard what you said.
I know, right?
I was like, wow, okay, my man's going there. And I think I reached out to you and said, listen, I need a copy. Business, I need a copy. And honestly, I read this, I'm halfway through. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a book I've been waiting for. Wow. And the reason I say that is because the big thing for us, from Power to Fight's perspective, is that how do we improve cultural sensitivity, cultural competency in different institutions, but particularly around teaching. Yep. Our experience would be that we have many teachers who come out of it come not from an inner city context, land, and then don't really understand the culture. Yep. And therefore, one of our things is how do we then upskill people to do that? So when your book came out, and I was like, oh, hold on, here's a book written by a black teacher. So this will inspire and encourage black teachers. But also I can just say, listen, to white teachers and teaching staff, you need to read this. And it's funny, it's real, it's heartbreaking in places, brutally honest. And so much I can relate to. So, bro,
that's amazing.
I just want to say, big yourself up.
No,
everybody
thank you.
This book.
That's incredible, man. That's like, those are powerful words.
It's powerful, but it's true. And the reason why, the connection here, why I wanted to bring you on is that mainly, we, as I said, we talk to teachers a lot, but we also have this school to prison pipeline conversation, which we often look at. How do we disrupt this? Because for us, we often see so many of the young people impacted by violence have gone through this cycle. In school. Yep. Excluded. Yep. People will fail.
That's it. And then,
criminal justice system or death. Yeah. And it's a real thing. I've seen it with young people. First question I've got for you, is this a real thing have you experienced this in your context of teaching? What type of stuff have you seen around this? How do you deal with it as a black male, but also being aware this thing is real?
Definitely a real thing. Definitely a real thing. The saddest part is that there's a level of like invisibility that is part of the conversation. Yeah. So a lot of these kids, you won't even know that they're not there because they're not there. Yeah. And because there's not a big conversation around those communities, because the numbers are like, relatively small. Yes. Like people always forget that black people in this country, it's fewer than 3%, including black mixed race. It's not a lot of people in terms of numbers. Impact on the country, massive. Impact on culture, huge. In certain pockets, huge percentages of lots of different communities across the UK, because I'm seeing it now. But because this isn't something which you can see droves of people getting pushed out of the system, what it looks like on the ground is in certain environments or contexts, like in certain schools or in certain classes, in certain sets, if schools have like banding, you will just not see black faces. Yeah. And that translates to not seeing them in further education, higher education, in places of employment. And that's the waste of human potential. Yes. And that is an ongoing tragedy which you can definitely see in real life when you look around your places of power, your institutions, your businesses. So you got to think, why are they not there? Because when I was at primary school in Brixton, there were a lot of black people around me. And as I grew up and I went to secondary school in Battersea, there was still a lot of black people around me, a lot of black boys. Then the minute I got to like sixth form, and I went to Wimbledon College, because I'm Catholic, and it was a good Catholic sixth form, I was the only black teenager in my year group. Wow. Like, and this is weird. This is in the late 90s. Yeah. And I'm looking around thinking, first of all, I'm one of one. This is weird. But no one seemed to think that was odd. Yeah. So no one's doing any outreach work or trying to work out why that's a problem. Yeah. So I've just got to survive. And then I go into the world of work. I remember getting my first, after uni, I went to uni in Leicester. After Leicester, I thought I need to make some money, so I'm not going to stay on and do a master's or a PhD in that. You know, I could have.
Yeah.
I got a first at uni. I could have done what I wanted.
You should have done it. But
I could have done what I wanted, but
it's interesting.
I need to make money.
The work,
yeah,
the money conversation.
I had to earn.
Yeah,
you know, and this is one of those things as well that it's precarious out there when there's no generational wealth. Like I've not got, you know, I ain't got parents that have got like an estate that they're going to give to me. Yeah. So I knew I had to make money. So I thought, let me go and work. Went into like small J journalism. I'm working in Canary Wharf, Oval, going into the city. I just realized, where's all the black faces?
Yeah.
So that pipeline that we've talked about is happening. It's happening out of sight. And for a lot of people, out of sight is out of mind.
Yes.
Which I think is one of the biggest problems because people don't see that there's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, when as a teacher though, you see it up close because you see kids getting excluded, you know, like physically.
And can you see it coming?
You can definitely see it coming, but the problem is that like, it's in the book, so I can say it openly.
Yeah.
Because of basically like stereotyping, prejudice and so on, the same behaviors do get treated differently.
Right.
100%. So, you know, all kids have the capacity for the same level of nonsense and tomfoolery and messing about. Like, I don't care. You know, the horns effect and the halo effect are real. People's biases are real. Yeah. They don't think that a girl from a Southeast Asian country can play up.
Wow.
Because of deep-rooted stereotypes that predate all of us by decades.
Yeah.
So they're not looking for that behavior.
Yeah.
You know? And then those groups of students, they might not, they might just lean slightly into the shadows and just live their lives. But the focus on bad behavior among black boys, oh my God, people expect to see it, you know? And there's been research. There's been research in America where they set up classes and there are people who don't realize they've got biases and they are scrutinizing the black boy, watching for the bad behavior. Yeah. So when anything goes wrong, they pick up on that they literally see it more than in other groups. That's how prejudice works. Yeah. So therefore, you know, it's no accident that particularly black boys in this country are going to be at the sharp end of that prejudice because of the stereotyping and where it comes from. So they get treated worse as well.
And that is, I mean, that would be my experience, but something which I picked up in, you know, there's many things in your book, and this is something which I couldn't believe it when
what was it?
The Swan Report.
Yes, right. 1985.
Yes, I was
only 3 at the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. You weren't studying the Swan Report in 1985, but when I read this, I was like, oh my God, I'm just going to read this quote, right? So you said in your latest book, you mentioned the Swan Report, and this is what it said in the Swan Report. No teacher training. This is 1985. Everyone needs to understand this is 1985. No teacher training institution appears to have succeeded in providing satisfactory grounding in multicultural education for all its students. And that the great majority of students are thus entering teaching having received little or no guidance on how to adopt a broadly based approach to education, which takes full account of the presence of ethnic minorities in our society.
Yep.
So in a nutshell, in 1985, this Swan Report was saying that teachers coming in have got no cultural sensitivity. There's there's nothing which is going to show them how to work in a hyper-racialized community. Okay, that's 1985. But fast forward to 2022, my experience with the 12,000 practitioners we've trained in the last 3 years, and a vast majority of those would be teachers, nothing's changed.
Yeah.
So to Jeffrey, why?
Yeah.
And how do we know it's a problem, but what do we need to do to alter this?
The first thing, because it's crazy when you put it like that, because 1985 was like, you know, almost 40 years ago now. Right. This is a serious problem. Yeah. The first issue there is that people are not actually looking up and seeing the situation for what it is. So they're not even realizing that there needs to be a level of cultural competency because they're not looking at it. If I put a ball on that table, right, like a glass ball, like a valuable one, right, and I roll it that way, right, you know what's going to happen to it. It's going to keep on rolling. You know, it's logic. It's going to fall off the table. It's going to smash.
Yeah.
If it's a valuable ball, you can catch it if you're looking at it, or I could like intervene or do something. If you're not looking at that ball, you let it roll, you let it smash. If you're not even listening out for it, if you've got your hands on your ears, you won't even hear when it smashes. So people aren't looking at these communities, right? Beryl Gilroy wrote a book called Black Teacher. She's the first black head teacher in this country. Her son was Paul Gilroy, who wrote There Ain't No Black in Union Jack. This is serious business, right? Business, yeah. Beryl Gilroy wrote Black Teacher, 1950. She came over here. She had the roughest time because she could only find work in some rough East London school. It was a multicultural classroom, early multiculturalism, because it was after the Second World War. Yeah. And that whole book is about her just learning about all these different communities. Like, she had to learn about Greek people. She had to learn about Irish people. She had to learn about all sorts, Turkish people. And as a teacher, she has to go through those fires of just seeing who's in front of you, learning what their life is like, learning what their communities are like, and use it and being in conversation. Yeah. There's no dialogue. And I think part of it is they don't respect those communities enough to get in conversation. Yeah. Like, me and you talk to each other, it's because we respect each other. Like, we look at each other eye to eye. I respect you've got something to offer to my universe. You respect me, and we talk. If you don't respect a community, you don't even think that you need to talk to them. You might not even know they're there. Yeah. So with that Swan report, what's happening is the institution of education, and it's one of many institutions that's guilty of the exact same thing. They haven't actually looked up to see the communities in front of them and realize they need to be in dialogue with them. Therefore, they don't know anything about them, and the ball is just rolling, and it's going to fall and it's going to smash.
But here's the situation. I mean, it's everything you just said there resonates so much. So when I was a pastor in a church in Southeast London, we'd often get many people coming from all over London, outside of London as well. And very often we'd get teachers doing Teach First. Right. And they'd come from places outside North Wales. I've got nothing against North Wales. I've got family in North Wales, love North Wales, it's all good. But so a lot of the teachers would come from places like this, in the valleys, from the valleys, and they'll land, and they'd always be put in the most hyper-racialized, local, high density of Black, Caribbean, African. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to give you 3 months. And
you set the stopwatch.
I said the stopwatch. Stopwatch came 3 months in, and Ben, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
The community doesn't get me. The staff don't get me. The pupils don't get me. And I'm like, obviously. Yeah. Because you may well be skilled in teaching English or maths or whatever it is, but you don't understand the culture and the context that you're coming into.
Very simple.
So I always get very confused. And this is not just about teaching, this is also about the police. Because you often get police officers, and we spoke about this with Sace, who came on earlier on. You get police officers who are from Essex, policing Lewisham.
Right. And so they don't know that context.
And the only context they have of Black children or Black people is Top Boy. Yeah. Not anti-Top Boy completely, but I'm just saying the reality is, if that's all you've seen, then how are you going to handle me, who's not a drug dealer? Rapper, right? So there's these nuanced conversations which we don't have, but I believe it's these fine lines which actually result and continue the school to prison pipeline.
Yes, yeah.
What do we do?
I think what you need to do is, first of all, you need to enter a process of like identification. Like, you need to know your blind spots. It's the most important thing, because if you don't know what you don't know, you can't even take a step towards fixing it. And you need to, before that, I'm putting a lot of work on people here, you have to acknowledge that you have blind spots. Yes. But the problem with power, the problem with like racial power, gender power, class power, economic power, is that it doesn't admit that it's in any way deficient. Right. It has to like build itself up. So it doesn't admit that it's got blind spots, right? And because of the way that it works, that power can just continue to sort of like, dominate. Yeah. It doesn't need to admit it's got like blind spots. So there's no humility. Yeah. Because one of the things that I've benefited from in my movements throughout the world and my movements through teaching and everything else are moments where I've been forced to be humble. That's really, really beneficial to me. Yeah. So when I moved to East London to teach, I'd never taught a Muslim student, ever. Right. So just because of where I taught in West London at school, didn't have any Muslim population. I didn't have any Muslim friends. I grew up in like Brixton. There weren't, as far as I know, there probably were, but it wasn't, Yeah. Then suddenly I'm a young teacher in East London with like a 70% plus Muslim population at the school. I don't know anything about that population. That's humbling.
Yeah.
I have to go into listening mode. Yeah. I have to censor someone else.
Yes.
Because otherwise, what am I going to do? I'm just going to lead with, well, I'm an English teacher and I know that. And you don't know that. So listen to me as an English teacher. Yeah. You know, I'm black, so I could talk to these black kids and da-da-da. But I had to learn about the Muslim, you know, story, the narrative.
Yeah.
I had to talk to parents. I had to like park myself and let someone else be right in the middle. And that's what's not happening in these institutions.
And it's interesting you've used language such as learning and humility. So one of the things when we put out our tip report in 2020, we acknowledged that there was a lack of cultural competency, particularly in therapy. And these are some of the barriers to why black and brown families don't engage. But what we've moved away from the term cultural competency to, interestingly, to cultural humility and cultural sensitivity. And the reason why we've done that is because you talk about competency, you really mean mastery.
Yes.
And culture can't be mastered. And therefore, because of that, research tells you that actually humility is a better word. Cultural humility or sensitivity. Why? Because it forces you to take this posture of learning. And it's an ongoing, and it's more intersectional as well. So it's really interesting that you said all that, because it absolutely sits with the ethos of Power to Fight. But I think creating those spaces, particularly critical thinking. So when we do our training, teachers will often say, "I've not had the space," and I think it's really important.
The space to do what?
To have critical thinking. Because and then this is interesting.
I know you can tell from my face.
The reason I'd say this, and this is because I'm not a teacher, so whether I just have to either say yes, I believe you, or I don't believe you. But what has come from that is because they would say, particularly off the back of COVID, we're so busy. We're not only trying to deal with the pupils and the parents that we're dealing with, but also my own family. Yeah. And then when you actually create the space for critical thinking, they love it. But it's not a natural stance for a teacher, particularly when you've got pressure from Ofsted. And various other things.
All that accountability stuff.
But your face was interesting though.
It is interesting because, like, I'll just level with you. Like, to me, that's a bit of a. I'm stuttering because I don't want to say what I want to say, but I'm just going to say it.
No, you got to say what you got to say.
It's like a cop out. It's an easy way of kicking the real conversation into the long grass because there's never enough time. There's never enough time. Scarcity is real. Like, you know, there's never time to do anything. But there's time to get a haircut when you need it. There's time to watch. Hey, listen, if I wanna like watch a Netflix box set, I will make time for it. If there's certain things that we make time for. There's time to be on social media. So you know, so part of me, I know it sounds harsh and it sounds a bit like wagging a finger, but that cannot be the reason, because when you're motivated to do something, it happens because when it's important. It becomes urgent and it happens. So if it's not important, you need to just say, actually, it's not that I haven't got time. It's just not important enough. You know? So all the metaphors are true here. All the cliches. When your house is on fire, that's urgent. You've got to put that fire out.
No. I'm with you. And so things teachers can say, which I can't, and that's good.
So and then the other thing as well is, and this is crucial, like the paradigm at the moment is that, you know, you, as you say, mastery. We're encouraged, definitely teachers, to become like competent masters. You know, this idea you can get good, but what is missing there is just like basic knowledge. People don't know what has happened. So every group, if you look at all these groups, you know, like Black Caribbean, you know, West African, Muslim, every group's got a story, and those stories are different. And you need to know those stories to understand where that ball is when it's rolling. It's so important. If you don't know the story of a group of people, then you can't actually engage with them. So when you're looking at Black Caribbean boys, you need to know that there was a point when there were ESN schools in this country, you know, educationally subnormal schools, and more than 70% of Black Caribbean boys in some parts of London were put into the ESN category. You need to know that to understand what you're looking at when you see a black boy turn up at school.
That's not required reading.
It's not required reading.
Who's the guy who wrote the book?
Bernard Cord. Yeah.
So that, you know, that was from the 70s. It should be required.
No one knows that,
but nobody talks about it.
So you're starting from a point of deep deficit in just understanding the context, and every group has their own story. And I feel like I'm a people person. Like, I get energized by people. Like, I really do. It sounds like cheesy, but I sort of like feed off that energy. And I'm the kind of person where if someone stops me and starts, you know, long rambling story, I'll just be like, you know what, let me just hear it. Because, you know, it helps me to understand me as well.
Yeah.
If you don't have that impetus to get someone else's story, then you can't understand them and you won't respect their narrative enough to even respect their struggles.
Yeah, you're right. And
you
the
know?
story, hearing different people's story. I mean, I'm similar. I absolutely love hearing where people are coming from, but people would argue it's a space conversation, but I think it's a great provocation that you've just had there, and I think it's important.
Yeah.
I want to just touch on something which I also know is deeply close to your heart.
Okay, here we go.
Which is music.
Yes.
You're a music man, which is another reason why I was like, I like this guy. He knows his grime.
Yep.
He knows his rap. He knows, you know, all the things I'm into. And I know it's not just that as well, because you play guitar and all that type of stuff, which is great. Because often I don't want to create stereotypes for people, but you know,
I do love hip hop.
You do love hip hop. We know there's stereotypes, but there's also things that you're into. So I feel like I want to ask some questions like who are your top three. Like, I know, okay. You know this one coming. I want to ask. So
I'll start thinking.
Yeah, so I'll come to that. So you know, you got a bit of time to think, but like, I would love to know, because we always say, well, let me do top five actually. Say top five MCs, and that can be UK or US.
Oh man, that makes it even harder.
I know, because if we were just like,
I can narrow it down.
You can narrow it down. Or, you know, we could do top 5 US and top 5 UK. So we can do that at some point. There you go.
I like that.
So you got a bit of time to think.
Yeah. I'm ready for
While you're thinking about that.
I need my notebook.
Yeah. So you need to.
I need to get like a chart here.
And I know these questions are bad because when somebody puts these questions to me, I then have to say, well, what are we talking about? We're talking about lyrics. We're talking about influence. I'm not going there. You just got to tell me. Right? But on serious question, one of the things we often have to deal with is the connection or the perceived connection between violence affecting young people and drill and UK rap. For someone who has written about, I don't like the term urban, but for want of a better phrase, that urban black music, for someone who's got a passion about it and someone who also engages with young people on a regular basis, who has passion for this type of music, is there a connection? And should we be concerned?
Yeah, there's definitely a connection. There are multiple connections, right? It's very interesting because you got to put it into not just one context, but various contexts. So first of all, you got to look at these like social issues. You know as well as I do, there are like socio-economic issues that are impacting upon, you know, black communities, like way more so than other communities. More black children in this country, percentage-wise, are in poverty than their white peers. Fact. Right, so this is an issue because with that comes all these other social issues like, you know, criminal activity, sub-economies that need to be filled in some way, antagonism with the authorities and so on. Boom, that's one of the things there. Then any cultural artifact that comes from that is going to have that as part of its conversation. Like hip hop was never just about the party. It was also about socioeconomics. It was also about politics. It was also about fitting into a society where certain communities had struggled to, you know, be seen as whole. So the music is kind of like a reflection of that. Then you get this other thing whereby, you know, music, culture, it gets like commodified, you know? So hip hop is like in its 50s now. All its offshoots are kind of younger, but in this country, everything that's come through like jungle, UK garage, people talking fast over beats, you know, that has always been linked to a kind of cultural capital of blackness, which is really, really, really valuable. It's happened over and over again. Jazz, rock and roll, blues, R&B, hip hop, you know, I'll keep going. Any black artifact, they can sell it because it's illicit, gangster rap in America. So you get this weird thing where it becomes like monetized. When you go to like these big festivals, the audiences aren't all black.
Well, we always say that.
You know what I mean? Like
Stormzy headlined
Glastonbury.
I didn't see no black people.
There's no one from the ends in that because they don't know where Glastonbury is and they can't afford a ticket. You know, it's like so it becomes monetized, and then actually society's obsessed with sex and violence. It's like, you know, we love movies and stories that are illicit. You know, it appeals to the adolescent, you know, juvenile brain of like risk and so on. So this music, because it's been monetized, it's going to speak to that because it sells. And that's really crude. So then people making this music they might accidentally start like catering to that taste, to that palate, because it's hot.
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen. So hip hop is like just gone like overboard, where it's just like grotesquely, you know, sort of like monetized, and it's about capital
and heavily sexualized,
and hyper masculine and kind of toxic in many different ways. It's still got those elements of, you know, reflective creativity, of social commentary. It's still in there somewhere. And I think it's the same thing over here. So the music is, on the one hand, offering a space for expression, creativity. You know, if you're making a song, you're not out in the streets doing something else in that moment. But on the other hand, it's absolutely playing into a particular narrative and creating that narrative. And it's armor. It's kind of tragic.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, when you cut away people and just look at who we are, we sort of clad ourselves in various armor. And a lot of these genres, it's a particular armor to fit into a particular context.
I think it's a really good point, and it's so. My answer to that question is always yes and no. Mm-hmm. It's always kind of like, on one hand, you know, music has been around, which impacts dominant youth culture for years. And you know, we can go back as far as rock and roll. That was the devil at one point. Whatever.
Yeah.
And my experience of grime and UK rap and this type of stuff, like similar to you grew up with this type of stuff. What I would say is that there definitely feels to be a difference to when I was younger and what I was listening to in the 90s. If I'm listening to East Coast hip hop in my house in South East London, I'm unlikely to ever meet Biggie Smalls.
Yeah.
There's something about proximity between artist and listener from a UK perspective. We always had MCs, but they weren't charting and going number one in the same way now. I'm like, oh, that kid from my state is blowing.
Yeah.
So I think there's something like that. I also wonder if there's a technology conversation we need to have. That, you know,
the digital age changed
back in the day, you had to go to studios to master your stuff and do what we do now is you can do everything in your room. So I think this combination is something, but unfortunately I've seen young people who I've worked with who are drill artists, who are UK rap artists who have lost their lives. And I always say this, was it because of the music we're making? I'm not sure. But what we don't want to talk about is that as soon as you get 1 million hits on your YouTube video, going to Morley's Chicken becomes a little bit more complicated. You haven't got Jay-Z, Beyonce security. And it ends up unforgiving.
And then people make assumptions about how much money you got, what your life is like. And then also this horrible thing with like, there is a very hyper masculine strand, not even a strand, like backbone in this music, in this culture, and it comes through lots of different musical genres. You definitely get it in hip hop, you definitely get it in dancehall, you definitely get it, you know. And this hyper masculinity is linked to kind of like authenticity of self. So you've got to like walk the walk and talk the talk. Right. So otherwise you're fake, and this is a problem, because it means that your acts of bravado and your proximity to like criminality, or your proximity away from the establishment, because no one wants to be Carlton Banks, like, you know, no one wants to be.
Or the new Carlton. I don't know if you've seen, the new Bel Air. This is like evil Carlton. I got a phone call from my mum saying, "Oh, I like new Fresh Prince, Carlton, evil." I was like, "Yeah, mum, evil Carlton." But you're right. Nobody wants to be that.
So then it becomes a case of, you know, they got to double down, and that is that in itself. That needs support and help. Like, anyone in that situation needs support to know that, you know what, you can be an artist, you can be an entrepreneur, you can be a musician, you can be all these things. You don't have to be leaning into this stuff, but the pressure to be authentically, you know, and this is...
it probably is changing a bit. I mean...
I hope so.
There are... So, you know, you take an artist like Dave. Little Sims. There's Kojo Radical. There's people out there. I'm like, do you know what? Actually, it feels like there's a shift, because you guys are not just making good music.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's
And it's
underground.
sort of saying,
No, you're actually charming with this type of stuff as well. But it still feels like even if I take those three artists on a street level,
well, this is it.
That's not the arts they respect.
No. People like no one's like bumping like pure Stormzy at like a house party. Like,
no, exactly.
I love Stormzy. I know that the kids aren't sort of like,
this is it. It's drill artists who I don't. I've got to the point where I can't keep up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you who, but the ones. It's not the ones who are charting.
Yeah. Which
are influencing the kids. But it's, I suppose what I'm getting at is how do we equip ourselves, whether that's teachers or whether that's parents or carers, to encourage our young people. It's youth. But there's levels to this.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, what we're seeing is this crossover between what you're listening to and then it spilling into real life.
Yeah, which is crazy, man, because this is like creative stuff. I think that a big part of it for me, because I've got like a critical analysis kind of brain. That's the muscle that I've been building for a long time. And I find what critical analysis allows me to do, like I did in Blacklisted, it gives me distance.
Yeah.
And that gives me literally an advantage point.
Yeah.
Like I can see things from up there because I take time to work it out. So I can look at something like UK drill critically and understand where it's coming from. That's why I wrote Hold Tight.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to chart this journey,
amazing.
This like Black British journey that had all sorts of roots. And I could see that people were talking about grime without a single, like people were talking about grime in newspapers and magazines that didn't listen to jungle, that didn't understand where UK garage came from. How are you going to listen to grime and not know about dancehall? Like you, man. So I thought that was important. That's why I wrote it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is actually quite empowering because when you give, it's a cliche, but it's true. Knowledge is power, man. Like when you give people a sense of the story, the knowledge, you can chart UK drill. You can understand where it came from. You can understand it critically. You can criticize it for better or for worse. And any sensible person will be able to then distance themselves from the parts of it that they don't actually need to be part of.
Sure.
But when you're just like kicked into it and you're swimming around in it and your brain hasn't got a prefrontal cortex because you're 14 and you can't do long-term decision making, you're not thinking about, well, how does this fit into my life and what part of this story do I want to be part of? Yeah. But that's exactly where they need to be because that's the difference between, a Kendrick Lamar or a Dave and someone who is just like running around the streets getting themselves into serious trouble because they want to be real.
Yeah, no, it's a massive point. So on that note, you've had enough time now to work out who your top 3 or top 5. I said top 5, didn't I?
I know.
Artists, give me
no particular order.
No particular order. Give me your UK.
Woo! UK, Kano.
Number 1.
Kano, maybe not number 1, but Kano comes into my mind immediately because. First of all, contrary to what I've just said, in terms of lyrics, Kano's one of the like low-key, one of the like gulliest artists. Like he's actually really like his words grip you raw, But he's a real poet, carefully crafted, and he's put in so much work into his career. His output, his body of work, going back to mixtapes, is amazing. I also love where he sits in that intersection of like his personal narrative, like coming from Caribbean culture and East London culture. Yeah. I don't think anyone is straddling those worlds as well as Kano since maybe Smiley Culture.
Wow.
That's which people don't talk about, but I would say like Smiley Culture straddled those worlds. Yes. East London Cockney, patois speaking, Jamaican. Kano does the same thing.
And he crafts his albums well.
Yeah.
He's an album artist.
He's an album artist. But he can also do like just raw lyrics that just get you. Yeah. So Kano's well up there for me. I'll say J Hus. I find the most enigmatic of enigmatic artists. J Hus. I'm gonna put it down, put it to the camera like it's WWE. J Hus should be this country's poet laureate. Like,
wow.
I think J Hus is one of the best living poets that we have. And I say that, someone that's like, I studied English literature to degree level.
As did I, by the way.
Oh, there you go.
Put that in the mix.
Yes.
But,
there we go.
Not big anybody up. Yeah. He's got more books than me, but it's all good. But yeah, no. But I hear you what you're saying.
He's a poet.
Jay Huss.
He's a poet. His words fall like between the spaces of meaning all the time. So he says simple things that are profound. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Like, thought it was a bulletproof vest. Nah, that's just a body warmer. I'm telling you, man. That's a deep line. You know? You know? Like, that's deep.
No, you can unpack that in multiple ways.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You know? And I think that I'm not going to patronize him and say that, oh, it's just accidental. It's he knows what he's doing with his words. Yeah.
He needs to drop an album, though.
He needs to drop an album, yeah. Like
I got excited at one point.
I know it was all over social media. I was like, okay, and then it just didn't, you know. Yeah. So Jay Huss, Kano, we're just doing UK.
No. You can throw in because you know I want you to phone US.
MF Doom.
Oh wow.
MF Doom easily. Doomale.
Wow.
Doomale all day. When MF Doom died, I was in bits. Because I'm such an MF Doom fan, because he creates like universes and galaxies.
Favorite album?
Maybe the Victor Vaughn one, Venomous Villain. But then Food maybe after that. But yeah, MF Doom's like creates worlds, and he also speaks to like Black resistance all the way through, which I love. Even though it's like sci-fi and like American cowboy language and all sorts of weird stuff. Yeah. And just the flow is just bonkers. It's MF Doom. Okay. Yeah.
Give me two more.
Andre 3000.
Oh, wow. Definitely.
Because he's just a true poet. And you know what I like about him, actually? I worked this out only last week because I think about this question a lot. Yeah. I worked out why I like him. His conceptual happy place is at that cusp of like adolescence and adulthood.
Yes.
Which I think is an important thing for humans to realize, that we are always at that point of not knowing, and we need to be kind to kids because they're at the cusp of knowing and not knowing.
Well, it's very much that William Blake age of innocence, age of experience.
That's it. Yeah.
Somewhere in that liminal space between the two.
And if you treat your kids like that, like in your work, society looks at like a 14-year-old. Yeah. It's like a 3-year-old at the same time as being like a 21-year-old.
Absolutely.
And that's really profound. That's why I like teaching, because, you know, adults often look at teenagers and they get scared of them, or they think they're up to no good, or they think they should know better. But actually, a lot of the time, teenagers are just like toddlers. They just need the basics, and they're getting it wrong.
No, you're totally right. And I think Andre 3000 is fascinating because he's somebody who over-delivers. So when you hear a verse, you're like, oh, you've given me, I feel like I shouldn't be listening to this. But I think of the Life of the Party verse. Yeah. I feel like this is like almost like a diary.
This is he gives you.
Yeah. So like, I concur. Oh,
lovely. Is that 5?
That's 4. One more.
Oh man. I always struggle with the last one because I've always got all these different angles. Like there's, you know, people like Ghostface Killer. I love Ghostface Killer. Love Ghostface. Storytelling to me. Slick Rick. Like, come on, Slick Rick, the storyteller. Rakim, because he basically invented the flow. Yeah. Without that, you know, then we got problems. It's really, really hard, man.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, maybe. Then I weirdly in my head I always go to Missy. This is really weird.
Interesting. No, I don't think it's weird. I can see why you went there, and I think she's underrated.
Yeah.
I think when you've got someone as creative as her,
but
she produces, she sings, she raps, and then the videos,
it's like
a complete package.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a big part of like in hip hop. The party starter is an important figure. Yeah. You know, and Missy's probably the best party starter after someone like MC Hammer. MC Hammer started a party to the whole world.
Oh yeah, Hammer was. I mean, I went to a Hammer concert at 12.
Oh man,
Mum took me in Wembley Arena.
Life changing.
Honestly, it was probably, and it is. I've seen Michael Jackson live at the Bad concert.
Wow.
88. Madonna.
Oh my goodness.
Girly show, which is probably a little bit exotic for my or even erotic for a 15-year-old.
Yeah,
but you know, went anyway. And then Prince.
Wow.
And I've seen those 3.
You've seen the
so I'm fortunate, but Hammer as weird as it sounds.
No, listen.
It was like he had like 200 dancers on stage.
Yeah.
And incredible. But listen, I just want to. There's so much I could talk to you about.
I know, right?
We
just scratched the surface.
We just scratched the surface. I know. But you know, if I keep going down this route, it's going to be 2 hours. You know, and I'd love to do it. But I just want to say thank you. And the reason why I want to say that, it's not just because of you writing great books. It's not just about your music knowledge and the show that you've got on is it Radio 1 you're on?
Radio 4.
Radio 4.
Radio 4.
Look at that. Yeah. Highbrow.
Yeah, we got music on
Radio 4. You got music on Radio 4. No one does that. It's not just because of that. It's because you are absolutely yourself. There's an authenticity in what you bring to this conversation. And I know so many people are inspired by your words. You're giving voice to the voiceless. You're fiercely passionate about what you do. You're just this person. I want to say thank you. We don't often give flowers.
Oh, man.
We give flowers when people unfortunately pass. We don't give them when they're alive enough. Bro, you're brilliant at what you do.
Oh,
thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for being a black teacher in this space. We had, as I said, Lord Willie, Lord Hastings, they were talking about, we need more black teachers. We need this. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But we also need the right type. And bro, you fall into that context. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you for coming down all the way from East Yorkshire.
East Yorkshire, yeah. I came all the way down. I've got a rucksack and everything. I was like, what, you know? I'm like,
no. So thank you so much for your time.
No, it's amazing, Ben. It's been amazing, and thank you. And yeah, your work is inspirational and essential as well. So I just hope that we get as many people being part of the right conversation.
Thank you so much, bro. Appreciate it, man.